Hello! Welcome to the next section, Creating a Solid Scaffolding. In this section, we will first build our scaffolding, then we will learn about typography, and then learn about tables. Finally, we will learn about cross-browser compatibility. Now we move on to the first video of this section, Building the Scaffolding. In this video, we are going to complete the grid rows, then nesting rows, and finally, complete the grid. The Bootstrap framework relies in its grid system. Bootstrap offers components that allow us to structure a website in a responsive grid layout. We have created an electronic square sheet table that is divided into many rows and columns. But what would happen if we wanted to change the layout of a single row? That could be painful. The Bootstrap grid system works in a different way. By letting you define a set of rows, each one having a set of independent columns, it allows you to build a solid grid system for your web page. Also, each column can have different sizes to perfectly fit your template. This not being enough, the Bootstrap grid system adapts for every viewport and resolution, which we call responsiveness. To start learning about the grid system, we introduce this grid as an example of a landing page. As you can see, it is represented by 7 rows, each containing a different number of columns. We will now use a non-mobile viewport. To start that, let's use our default layout presented in the first section. Here we have created an HTML page named Grid. We have specified the doc type as HTML. As you can see, we have the 3 meta tags, title link to style sheet, and support to lower versions of Internet Explorer. Also, we have given link to jQuery and bootstrap.js. We have added a div with the .row class inside the div.container tag. The hierarchy for the grid system always follows the sequence of a container that wraps rows and multiple columns. Keep in mind to always use this sequence to get a proper output. Now that we have our .container with the first row, let's create our first column. Remember that every row is subdivided into 12 parts, so you can have up to 12 columns in a single row. To identify a column, we must follow this template. The first asterisk means the viewport for the column, and the other one means the size of the column. To create our first column, we create a column identified by .col-md-12 inside our row. This is our column. We have added the text as a header. We will now add the class. In this column, the MD in .col-md-12 means that for the viewport medium, the column must have a 12-column width. In other words, the column fills the entire width of this row. This column will fill the complete width because it is our header, and as we can see in the image, this row is composed of just a single column. So, to create a column in the Bootstrap grid system, we must follow the rule of col method for every column. Let us add one more column now with a number higher than 12, for instance, 5 columns, and add text as a column. Let us check the same in Developer Tools. Knowing that every row is treated as a unit of 12 columns, the next ones will wrap in a new line, as shown here. Let us now divide our second row into 3 equal-sized columns, as shown in this diagram. Therefore, the code for the second row will be like this. We have created a div with the class as row, and then we created the class for column by defining the offset and set the size as 4. Here, the first one is an offset column, or in other words, an empty column that will be filled by a left margin. We again define a column of size 4. Let us add this code to our HTML page by replacing the previous code. So this is our second row. Let us check this now. This is our new row. As you can see, by adding the .col-md-offset-4 class, we create a margin to the left 4, sized in just this .row. The orange colour represents the margin. By having each row independent of the others, we can properly customize the layout to appear just as it is supposed to be. The blue colour represents column and occupies 4 spaces. The remaining part is also column, and it also occupies 4 spaces. Now we will advance to the third row in our scaffolding. So, This row is composed of 2 columns. The first column must fill 4 out of the 12 parts of the row, and the other column will fill the rest. This is the code for the third row. We first create a row and then we create a column of size 4, and post that we create another column of size 8. The fourth row is composed of a quarter divisor, followed by a half divisor, followed by a last quarter divisor. Using this in base 12, we have added this code. In the fifth row, we create it just as we did before. Create a row with 4 equally sized rows, which means that each column will have the .col-md-3 class. For the sixth row, we use nesting rows. Here we create the first .row, having 3 columns. As you can see, the first and the last column use the same class of columns in row 5, the .col-md-3 class, while the middle column is double the size, with the .col-md-6 class. Let's nest another .row inside the middle column. We create another class named row. When we create a new nested row, the columns inside of it are refreshed and you have another set of 12-sized columns to put inside it. So, inside this new row, we create 2 columns with the .col-md-6 class to generate 2 columns representing a fourth of the row. The concept of nesting rows is pretty complex, since you can infinitely subdivide a row, although it is great to create small grid components inside your page that can be used in other locations. We add this to our grid.html file. Let us now create the last row. This is the structure of the last row. This is the code for the last row. Here we have created the .col-md-2 column, followed by .col-md7 and .col-md3. Since this is the last row, we will create the row using the footer tag with these columns. This is our complete code for scaffolding. When we run this, we get an output as shown here. We have successfully created the layout as seen in this. We can easily switch the actual example grid with a fluid full-width layout. To do so, we need to replace the farthest container with container fluid. Let us see the changes. We can now see the full-width layout. With this, we have successfully completed the grid.